from the Kiwanis Club of Portmore. So far, I have Deep Donovan with me, but others will be joining. Looking forward to an interesting meeting, and thanks for the invitation.
You're most welcome, President Henry. Glad to have Kiwanis Club of Portmore joining us. Please come
Good
on.
evening.
Good
Sorry.
evening. I'm here.
Good evening, PE.
Go ahead. Yes.
Good evening. This is President Suzette from the Kiwanis Club of Longville Park, Southeast Clarendon. I have my secretary, O'Neill Hamilton, is with me online, and I have invited members of the Old Harbor High School Communication Studies class. Happy to be here. Looking forward to a riveting conversation as we explore our mother tongue. Thank you for having us.
Sure. And President Suzette, the persons who you have invited, are these high school students or tertiary students? You didn't say.
High school students doing communication studies, and this topic is one on the syllabus. Yes.
Okay, so I hope they learn something, or they can contribute later on to the meeting. Glad to have you all. Glad to have all of you. Always appreciate both young and older guests who are attending, and Kiwanians, of course. Division 23 East. Any clubs from 23 East? And 23. Okay, so let's move to SLPs. Do we have any SLPs who are joining us this evening?
Well, just before you go, we have Kiwanis Club of Constant Spring from 23 Central.
Okay,
Central. Yes, and I'm President Bashiva. With me on the call is Secretary Mitzi, Kiwanian Karen, Chairman Carol, and PE Sharon. I believe we're 5 in numbers thus far. Looking forward to a very interactive meeting as we go deep into our native speech.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
President Bashiva.
President Bashiva.
Okay, well,
President Stephen.
Yeah. President,
you're hurrying. It's 128 online, so obviously they want to hear your topic. Anyway, don't leave us out. I bring you greetings from the Kiwanis Club of New Kingston. And there are currently 4 of us online, and I'm sure others will be joining, but it's great to be on. Have a wonderful meeting, and let's hope we all can hear and listen to what is going on. This is DLG Gerthlin.
I recognize you, DLG Gerthlin. I recognize the voice anywhere. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Personally, as well as the Kiwanis Club of New Kingston, we always appreciate your support.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
DP Charmaine from the Kiwanis Club of West St. Andrew. We're online as well, and we're 4 in numbers right now. Thank you for having us.
4 in numbers, DP Charmaine. Thank you.
Good evening, President-elect Stephen.
Good evening.
This is P.E. Ornette from the Kiwanis Club, Sunshine City, Portmore. At present, there are 4 of us online. We are looking forward to a great meeting. Thanks for the invitation.
As I am also. Yes, P.E. Ornette, appreciate it. And your delegation also. So we have people from all over Kingston, Westmoreland, and overseas. Still on 23 Central. Microphone.
Hi, good evening. Good evening, P.E. Stephen. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks, President Erdesi. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, so how large is your delegation this evening?
Oh, 3 of us. To include LG Desmond, who is a dual member.
Sure, of course.
Okay. And DLG Keith and myself.
DLG Keith and yourself. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes, thank you.
All noted and welcome again. 23 Central. I know there are a lot of people here, so please, can you introduce yourself or your delegation if you're from a Kiwanis club? Are there any guests that are non-Kiwanians? I know at the beginning there were some persons who are guests who introduced themselves, but I'm also extending an invitation to those non-Kiwanians who may be attending for the first time or a repeat attendee to the meeting. Part of our Kiwanis tradition to welcome all of our guests, no matter where they're from.
P. Stephen?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
I heard some reference to some students.
Yes.
I'm not sure if these are the same students I was also aware of from Woolmer's lower sixth form. But if that was not the same group, I think we have some visitors from Woolmer's High School, and
Yes.
I just wanted to welcome them.
That's another group, DP
Oh,
Stewart.
okay, that's another
Okay.
group. Yeah.
All right, good night. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
My name is Cheryl Ann. I'm a former Kiwanian. I am introducing a group from Ascot High School. They're also in the audience. Thank you.
That's Cheryl Ann?
Yes.
Yes, okay, Cheryl. Okay.
Thank you.
You're most welcome. So we have Woolmerians, we have Calabar, and we have, well, Cheryl Ann, what's the name of your school again, please?
It's Ascot High School.
Ascot High School.
Oh, yes, Ascot High School, yes. My apologies. Any other guests, students?
Hi, good evening. My name is Shari. I am a postgrad student of Joseph's. I'm here to support him.
Okay, Shari, welcome also.
Yes.
So a lot of
Thanks. Hi, Cheryl.
Hello, Cheryl. She's bigging you up. Her microphone is
Hi, Shari.
Okay. Welcome everybody again. We have a full house. I'm not going to take up a lot more of the time. I want us to get into our guest speaker and some other Kiwanis activities so that we have enough time to discuss all of that. So let me move along with the program unless there's anybody else who I have not recognized yet would like to speak. If not, I'm going to move straight into birthdays and anniversaries. This is a regular feature of our meetings where we acknowledge Kiwanis Club of Kingston members who are celebrating birthdays, wedding anniversaries, or a special occasion like a birth in the family and so forth. This week, that is from the week June 16th to the 23rd, I checked the register and we don't have any birthdays. The register needs to be updated. So if there's anybody who is celebrating a birthday, they can open the mic and advise me. But I do want to take the opportunity to also wish a birthday to DP Arturo Stewart, who was actually technically yesterday, the 15th. But as you know, he's also another one of the stalwarts of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. So happy birthday to you, Arturo. I'll be belated, and anybody else. So I'm just going to quickly ask, is there anybody else on this meeting who's celebrating a birthday this week or a wedding anniversary or a special occasion that they'd like to share so that we can also send positive vibes your ways also? Any birthdays? No? Okay. All right. If not, let's move on to Kiwanis education.
President Stephen?
Yes, I'm hearing
Just wanted to share that we're also streaming live on YouTube. So if there's anybody who, well, there's room on the Zoom channel, but if there's anybody who can only connect us with us from, since there's so many persons from overseas, you can let them know that we're also streaming live on YouTube at the KCOK YouTube channel.
Okay, so if you ever want to revisit, thank you, DP Stewart, and if you ever want to revisit this meeting or any other meeting, we have that YouTube channel. It has a wealth of information and a wealth of presentations over the years that Kiwanis Club of Kingston has done. All right, YouTube KCOK, acronym for our club here. So before we go to the guest speaker and our main feature, we'd like to share with you some Kiwanis education. I see that we have LG Desmond down to share with us Kiwanis education. So I'm going to ask LG.
Thank you.
If you can take the microphone at this time.
Thank you, Acting President Stephen. Can you hear me clearly?
Loud and clear, loud and clear.
Good evening, everyone, fellow Kiwanians, SLP members and guests. The topic is Signature Project Contest. Signature projects show the impact of Kiwanis Club can have on a community, from playgrounds and parks to festivals and fundraisers. Signature projects are the hallmarks of what Kiwanis clubs are known for in their communities. Kiwanis International is hosting the 8th annual Signature Project Recognition Program for clubs and districts in 2024. Clubs with 27 members or fewer will be judged in Group 1 category. Clubs with 28 members or more will be judged in Group 2 category. Each group will be judged separately, and the top 10 finalists will be determined for each group. The top 3 selections for each group will be recognized as gold, silver, and bronze winners at the 2024 Kiwanis International Convention. The winning projects in each category will be awarded $2,000, $1,500, and $1,000 respectively. I just want to say that the contest opens January 2 and submissions are accepted through to January 25. That's it for Kiwanis Education, President. Over to you, and thank you.
Thank you, LG Desmond. Appreciated. Always good to learn more about the Kiwanis movement. And we do these little small presentations to give you a flavor of what Kiwanis is about. As you, those who are Kiwanians will know that as you get into the movement, you learn a lot more about it. And those who are not a part of the movement, you'll understand a little bit more about what we do and why we do what we do. I did miss, through an oversight, I did miss apologies for absence, and I would like to take this opportunity to give an apology for 2 persons who have communicated to us, very important persons. First of all, President Newton, who has a family commitment to go to, but he should be joining us later on, as well as our club secretary, DLG Willie, who you'll notice is not here today. He has another commitment also, so he has extended his apologies. So
and DLG Stan.
Oh yes, right. The chairman DLG Stan Dunwell also extended his apologies. Also, he usually is here. Those 3 members are usually here, but the President Newton will be here later on. But DLG Stan and DLG Willie have extended their apologies. So let's get into the meat of the matter. What you've all been waiting for. Thank you for your patience. And I'm going to take the privilege of asking another Kiwanian to give us some background and an introduction to our guest speaker. We have Chairman Arsenio joining us again, who is now going to give us a little profile on Dr. Farquharson as we lead into his presentation. Arsenio, you should be there. I think I saw you online.
Yes, I'm here.
Right. Over to you now.
All right, good night again. It is my pleasure to introduce this evening's guest speaker. Dr. Joseph T. Farquharson is a senior lecturer in linguistics at the University of the West Indies, Mona. Dr. Farquharson holds a BA in linguistics and Spanish and a PhD in linguistics from UWI, as well as an MPhil in European literature, Spanish, from the University of Cambridge. He has been serving as the coordinator of the Jamaican language unit since January 2019, and is currently a member of the Communication and Information Advisory Committee of the Jamaican National Commission for UNESCO and the convener of the subject panel for Cape Communication Studies.
This is my time.
I believe so. Were you saying something else, Arsenio, or that was, I'm not sure if it's
no, sorry, over to you, Dr. Farquharson.
All right. Thanks very much, Arsenio. And thanks for keeping it short. Thanks very much. Good evening, everybody. Thanks to the Kiwanis Club of Kingston for the invitation. I must make special mention of Cleo Bell Lewis, who is the person who suggested this, and Cleo has always been a supporter of the work done by the Jamaican language unit. And I'd also like to thank one of your, other members, Stuart Spencer, who was instrumental in putting this all together and who had to endure me for about an hour one day as I tried to sell the vision to him. I see people from all over, people from UWI, people from Farin, people from high schools, etc. And I just want to thank you all for coming out to hear what I have to say. It would be remiss of me if I did not mention the debate currently taking place about the impact of UWI on national policy. And I just wanted to point out, because sometimes people don't realize this, that what I am engaged in now is a part of the work of the University of the West Indies in getting the knowledge that we have been generating for decades out to the population, understanding that the Jamaican population and also the population of the other contributing territories to UWI are the chief funders of the education that UWI provides and the research that we are able to do. And we are producing research to influence policy, whether or not a government is willing to listen or whether they come to us to seek our advice is another thing. So I'd like to make special mention of the students from the high schools. I've heard Ascot High is here, Winston Jones High School, Wolmer's Girls, and also Calabar. So welcome everybody. And in my role as convener for Cape Communication Studies, I'm particularly heartened to see the high school students here, which means that these people are serious about getting their getting top grades in their exams. So without further ado, I will start my presentation. I had intended for the presentation to be interactive. I had to revise that because I only have 30 minutes and it's very difficult in 30 minutes to do what I wanted to do, how I wanted this thing to unfold. And so it's not going to be the sort of interaction that I'd wanted because there's a whole lot for me to get through. So the topic was, does the Jamaican language have rules?
Sorry, can I interject, Dr. Farquharson?
Yes, you may.
We just use the 30 minutes as a guide, but we're a bit flexible in the evening.
Oh,
so don't worry about that.
Good then.
Okay, go ahead.
Thanks very much. All right, so when I put up the flyer for the event on my Facebook status, one of my linguist colleagues responded by saying, Janua, could Jamaicans really be doubting this today in 2024? And I know why he said that, because linguists tired, of the same debate over and over and over. But I think it needed saying, especially because the original topic that had been suggested was, is Jamaican a language? And that was the crux of the discussion that I had with Stuart Spencer, pointing out that we're past that point, long ago. So in 2005, the Jamaican Language Unit ran an all-island survey, surveyed 1,000 people, asking them, is Patois a language? And in 2005, 79.5% of Jamaicans said, yes, it is a language, which means that it's really just 2 out of every 10 persons online here now who don't believe it's a language. And so I thought, spending time to go and convince 2 out of 10 wasn't a good use of time. Instead, it would be better to show that the language is systematic, that it has rules, and that's going to be the focus of my presentation. By the way, you'll see there too, we also asked, should Parliament make Patois an official language? And 68.5% of Jamaicans said yes. And this was in 2005. So we're making progress. We're making significant progress in this regard. So there was a response from a Facebook friend, and he said, all the best with this. I would agree it has some rules, though writing and reading it are painful and irritating. And then we started a discussion. I said, but why did you say rules? Why is the word rules in scare quotes? You're indicating by the scare quotes that you don't think it has rules. Do you consider the English language as a language that has rules in quotation marks? And if not, why is there this difference between how you perceive the Jamaican language and how you perceive the English language? So there are still some people there, even if they believe it is a language, they don't think it has rules. And that's what I hope to address this evening. So are dialects broken languages? In the time of Miss Lou, when she started out in the 1940s, and for several decades afterwards, it was very common to refer to the Jamaican language as the Jamaican dialect or just dialect. And people called it dialect because they saw it as a broken version of English. It didn't have grammar books, it didn't have dictionaries, there was no standard way of writing it. And so for them, that meant it was a broken version of English. But for linguists, when we use the word dialect, and I'm giving this preamble so that we are clear when I use terms, when linguists use the word dialect, we're not talking about whether or not the thing is written. We're not talking about whether there's a huge body of literature. We're not talking about whether there are textbooks, grammars that tell you how to speak, how to write this language. For linguists, a dialect is simply a regional or social variety of a language. A dialect is a regional or social variety of a language. That is, it's language as used in a specific location. Example for English, Texas English is a dialect. Bostonian English is a dialect. The English spoken in New York is a dialect. Also, the language or how specific social groups speak. So educated people don't use language in the same way as non-educated people. There might be ethnic lines, so Indians don't necessarily use language, the same language in the same way as people who are not Indians. I lived in Trinidad for a few years, and there were distinctions in the speech of Indo-Trinidadians and Afro-Trinidadians. They're speaking the same language or languages, but they don't use all of the same things while they're doing so. So those are dialects for linguists. And voila! So I'm going to surprise you and distress some people this evening. Based on that definition, it means that Standard English is also a dialect. So Standard English is a dialect of English. It's just a social variant of this thing that we call the English language. That may be perplexing for you, for a lot of people, because the notion you have in your mind is that you have the standard variety of the language, and then you have these other things called dialects. No, Standard English is just one of the dialects of the language called English. And let me see if I can show that. Coming from Old English, which started out somewhere in the 400s of the Common Era, we have varieties that have developed from Old English. And today, we identify some of them as Geordie, Cockney, Standard English, and Brummie. We can see Geordie, Cockney, Standard English, and Brummie as daughters of this thing called Old English, meaning Them come from, them born from Old English. Them are Old English picnic. That means that Cockney and Standard English are sisters. Cockney is not a daughter of Standard English. And what I'm trying to say, it is not that the people who speak Cockney tried to speak Standard English and failed, and that is how you got Cockney. What I mean is that coming from this thing called Old English, there was a continuous line of development coming down. One variety developed into what eventually got called Cockney, and another variety developed into what became Standard English. If we look at it in terms of people and family, Standard English is the daughter that the parents spend money upon. So it's the daughter, them send go prep school, them send her go Topanaris High School, them send her go university, and the others did not get that opportunity. It doesn't mean that they couldn't become something like Standard English. It's that the resources weren't spent on them. So in terms of their structure, they are not really that much different from Standard English. It's really the external trappings that make Standard English look different. And then because Standard English dress up in a pretty clothes, people believe that Standard English is better. No go so. Standard English just have pretty clothes, but we don't know how Standard English heart look. You see a man facing a senior art. Geordie, Cockney, and Brummie are equally valuable, are also structured. It's just that they did not get resources spent on them. Let me then do the Jamaican scenario. In Jamaica, we also have different dialects, and I'm simplifying here. Our dialects aren't divided based on parishes. We probably have a northwestern dialect, and then probably something south central, and then eastern, etc. But I'm going to use how we mark sentences as being past to show that, because we have different variants of that thing that helps us to mark the past. And I deliberately did not put did here, like me did cook, because did is used all over the country, and we can't tell dialect based on that. But there are words in the Jamaican language that come from the English word been, like she has been to school, she has been eating, etc. That same been developed into a past tense marker in the Jamaican language. And it got, its pronunciation got changed in different places. So in Kingston, you'll hear people say, me and cook. In St. James, where I'm from, we'll say me when cook. In St. Thomas, we'll say they'll say me min cook. And in St. Elizabeth, people might say Ben bin is falling out of use though. But you have these varieties. These are generally thought to be corruptions of English, but they are normal developments of the English word been, which now have different variants throughout the country, in the same way that in English, you would have people in Texas pronouncing something different from people in Boston, and so on and so forth. So how linguists generally frame this, what I just tried to explain to you, is that language and power go hand in hand. Have we been bombed? Language and power go hand in hand. There's a dictum in linguistics, especially in sociolinguistics, that says a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. And what that says simply is that how we determine what is a language and what is a dialect is based on money and power. So it's nothing about the particular variety. It's not about whether people say ain't or people say am, etc. It's about who has money, who has power and authority. To make that clearer, if you have money and authority, what you speak is the language. And what the people without money and authority speak is the dialect. And that means, so let's take double negatives. Double negatives are frowned on in English. So I ain't got none. You shouldn't say I ain't got none. And what I mean by this thing is based on money and power. If in the 17th century, 18th century, when English was being standardized, the people who say I ain't got none were the people with the money and power. Today, standard English would have been I ain't got none, and we would have been laughing at the people who say I don't have any as illiterate and backward. So it's all about money and power. That's how language and dialect is determined in societies generally. But I told you that for linguists, a dialect is just a regional or a social variant. So what is grammar? The problem for people who live in societies like ours, post-colonial societies, is that our concept of grammar or concept of language is a set of rules about what to do and not to do that's in a book or book somewhere. So people from a particular generation will recognize the books on the screen, First Aid in English and New Junior English Revised, which we know as authorities on English grammar. And so for us, we associate grammar with something in books, telling us do this, do not do that. But for centuries, for millennia, and then centuries, that wasn't the concept of language, because humans have had language for a very long time before there was any writing and long before there was any grammar book. The first grammar of English written in English was written in the late 1500s. Are we then to say that English wasn't a language until the late 1500s? No. It's just that people decided to start writing down English grammar rules in the late 1500s, because before that, nobody wanted to associate with English. You associated with good languages, good quote unquote, like Latin and French, which were the languages of scholarship. And I'm sure back then, people were having some of the same discussions. Like, why would you waste time on English? We have all of this knowledge in Latin. We have all of this knowledge in French. Why would anybody waste time to go and develop English when we can simply use Latin and use French? So, you know, things are circular. So what then is grammar? Grammar is the system that is in the brains of speakers of a language. It's those rules, the mechanism that allow them to produce well-formed or grammatical sentences in the language. So the grammar of English is that mechanism in the brain of the speaker that lets the speaker know that I am going is a good English sentence and I going am is not a good English sentence. No book has to tell a speaker of English that I going am is not the words are all English, but the pattern doesn't follow the pattern of the language called English. And you will not find that in any grammar book for English. But speakers know this because the system, the rules are in their heads. So the grammar in books is really people's attempt to represent what is in the brain of some speakers. Remember, we spoke about the rich and the powerful. And so what we get presented with as standard English is one set of people's grammar that is then disseminated to the rest of the population as the language, and then everything else is wrong. So just remember, grammar is in the brain. And what we'll be trying to do this evening is to look at the grammar in the brain of speakers of the Jamaican language. There are two approaches to grammar. Linguists recognize two approaches. There's a prescriptive approach, and this is the approach that most of us would have been introduced to in school. The prescriptive approach is an approach that says there are these rules and everybody must follow them. It establishes guidelines and people must follow those guidelines, regardless of whether their parents do something else, say something else. The prescriptive approach says this is the way the language must be spoken. So you shouldn't split your infinitives. So you can't say to boldly go where no man has gone before. You have to say to go boldly, because the infinitive marker to and the verb has to be together at all times. But thousands, hundreds of thousands of English speakers are out there boldly going, and nobody has died from it. It's just that some people have made their way of saying things the way to say and write it. Then there's the descriptive approach, and the descriptive approach attempts to provide a thorough description of how people use language in real life. So you listen to speakers, hear what they're doing, and then you try to find the patterns in their speech, because the rules, the grammar are in their heads. Your work as a grammarian, as a linguist, is then to find out what is the system that underlies their use of language, how they are using language. Now, the presentation I'm doing, and many of the presentations I do, are built on decades of research into Jamaican language. One thing we can be proud of as Jamaicans is that the Jamaican language, what many linguists call Jamaican Creole, what most Jamaicans call Jamaican Patois, is one of the most, or one of the best described languages of its type. So of the dozens of languages out there that people call Creole languages, Jamaican Creole is one of the best described. Here we have Frederick Cassidy's Jamaica Talk, which gives one of the first basic descriptions of the language, 1961. Beryl Bailey's Jamaican Creole Syntax, which looks at the grammar of the language and was the first technical grammar written of the language. 1966, Frederick Cassidy and Robert LePage's Dictionary of Jamaican English, published by Cambridge University Press in 1967. Then there is, I've been trying to get rid of the, there we go, finally. Glenn Akers in the early 1980s did a study on Jamaican pronunciation. Then we have Rocky Mead. This is of JDF fame. His PhD research was on the pronunciation of Jamaican children, how children acquire the speed sounds of the Jamaican language. Pauline Christie did a lot of work writing in newspapers, etc., and many of those were put together in this book called Language in Jamaica, a very interesting and a good book for those who want an overview of the issues. Robert LePage, one of the first linguists at UWI from UCWI days, has a book called Jamaican Creole from 1960. Stephanie Derliman, Syntax of Jamaican Creole. Michelle Kennedy, a more recent work on quantification. This work, there's a whole book on the word every. So when Jamaicans say every boy have one book, there's a study on that every, an entire study. the lexicon again, the vocabulary of Jamaican Creole in Richard Alsop's Dictionary of Caribbean English Usage. Peter Patrick has done a whole study on those middle varieties. You know, people say I did go and so on instead of me went go. Some people say I did go or I going, etc. Peter Patrick has a whole book on that from the 1990s. And then the study of how Jamaicans use language on the internet by Andrea Moll. That's a more recent work. So there's a whole lot of literature out there. And I'm showing this to say, I'm not just talking off the top of my head. I have the backing of decades of work by scholars on the Jamaican language. So this configuration is a common one, especially the northwestern area of the island, the west. So you have a man and a man walk up to a woman on a beach and say, "You're Jamaican," which he could probably tell from how she looks. And if she responds, "Yeah, man, me am Jamaican," then that's a dead giveaway. Something tells us that something is not right. Me am Jamaican? That doesn't sound right. Now, if the language doesn't have rules, it means that anything should be able to go. So why is it that your guts tell you that you can't, that me am Jamaican is not good Jamaican? You have never read a book that said to you that in Jamaican Creole, in Jamaican patois, you can't say me am Jamaican, but you know that. And this is what I mean when I say that the grammar rules are in our heads. So it's not the books that are telling us what the grammar of the language is. We have those in our head. The books tell us what somebody's grammar is. So word order is important in language, and all languages don't have the same word order. So in some languages, you have the subject first, then you have the verb, then you have the object. English is one such language. In other languages, you have the object first, then the subject, then the verb. Others, the verb, then the subject, then the object. So you have people sounding like Yoda in Star Wars. Go to the planet I must, etc. Different languages organize their grammar in different ways. So if you think about German, German, ich habe mit dem Mann gesprochen. When you take that word for word in English, what you have said is, I have with the man spoken. And I normally have a longer example that I use to show the difference between the structure of German and the structure of English. So, which in German, ich habe mit dem Mann gesprochen und hat zu mir gesagt, and he has to me said. That's not how English orders things. That's also not how the Jamaican language orders things. So you don't say, me did with the man talk. If the language has no rules, why can't we just place things anywhere we want? And why is it that we instinctively know where the things should fall, where the verb should fall, where the noun should fall, and so on and so forth? So the proper English structure here is I have spoken with the man. Now, this doesn't mean that German is wrong. So when we get German word order, ich habe mit dem Mann gesprochen, and we get English, I have spoken with the man, we don't say, oh, the German is wrong or English is wrong. We just say they organize things in a different way. In the same way, the Jamaican language organizes things in a different way. So we say, me did talk to the man. So let's go to pronunciation. In English, you wouldn't realize that there are rules about what sounds can come together. Linguists have a fancy term for that. We call it phonotactics. So not all sounds can come close together or follow one after the other. So you can get sup at the beginning of a word. You can get sit. So you get sup as in spear. You get sit as in steer. And you get sk as in skier. But you will not find an English word with sebe or sede or sege. English phonotactics don't allow for that. English phonotactics also doesn't allow for schtere, which German allows. Very difficult, like Straße in German. English doesn't allow that. The sound system of the two languages are different. But then when we come to Jamaican, we say, oh, you know, just mash up the thing. No, it's that Jamaican has its own system and its own set of rules. So if we take the English word spoon, that becomes poon. Let me not use becomes, because the S from the becomes is going to now get attached to the poon. So spoon turn poon in Jamaican. English spoil become turn poil. English spit turn pit. English stop tap. Stick pick. Stand tan. Skin kin. Scrape preep. Sleep sleep. Slow slow. Sweep sweep swing swing. Now there are two major patterns taking place here. We have in this first set of words, from spoon right down to scrape, where the first sound is deleted from the word. Why are we doing that? And then people are going to say, oh, because, you know, Patois people lazy. Them no know English and them lazy. Then why them only lazy for spoon, stick, and stand, but not for sleep, slow, sweep, and swing? We don't say, me I go leap. We don't say the thing low for slow. We don't say, go and go weep out the house. Or them a wing, pa, whis. So why are they doing the deletion in the first set, but not in the second set? Now, if you place your hand, so if you place the back of your hand in front of your mouth, and you pronounce the sounds p, t, and k, p, t, and k, you should feel that there's this burst of air with p, t, and k. And if you try instead, there's a stream of air, but it's not the burst that you get with p, t, and k. Now, p, t, and k are sounds that we call plosives in linguistics, because you get this explosion when they are pronounced. And what is happening here is that speakers of Jamaican are deleting the S when the following sound is a voiceless plosive. I won't get into a voice. Voiceless means that the vocal fold doesn't vibrate when you pronounce the sound p. The mirror image of p is b. So if you place your fingers here at your Adam's apple if you're a man, or where your Adam's apple would be if you're a woman, and you say p versus b, you should feel your vocal folds vibrate for b, but not for p. So you have to say and p. You'll feel it vibrate for the b, not for the p. So when a voiceless plosive follows, you get the deletion of the S. But then the sleep, swing, slow, etc., those sounds, the w and l, are called approximants. So when it's an approximant that comes after the S, you keep the S. And this means that there is a basis for how we drop sounds and how and why we keep sounds. There is a phonetic motivation. So it's not because people are lazy. They are doing what languages and or speech organs allow us to do. So them not lazy. Or if them lazy with reason. They have a motivation for what they do, what they drop, when they drop what. I would have done an example with the the ones that come at the end of the word, but we don't have enough time, like ST, why we say best, why we say best for best, why we say bend for bend, but we don't say mill for milk. And that's a whole other thing. But again, the deletion is principled. So we have another set of words. A lot of people would know simit. We say simit for Smith. My people say sineally for snail. You might say sineal. Me say sineally. Snake becomes snake. I forgot to change that to snake. Smile becomes simile. Sneeze becomes sneeze. Snack, sunak, smoke, sumoke. Small, sumal. Smart, smart. In this set, we are inserting a vowel between the s and the consonant that follows it. So why are we dropping a sound in the first set, but we are inserting? Why we don't just drop the s here and say mit and nearly and neck and mile? Now, if you place your finger in front of your nostrils and you pronounce the sound that's the second sound in Smith. The M, first sound of man. You should feel air coming through your nostrils. And if you pronounce the second sound in snail, the N, you should feel the same thing. Those sounds are called nasals. They are nasal consonants. And so when you get the S being followed by a plosive consonant, a voiceless plosive, you drop the S. When it's followed by an approximant, you keep the S. But when it's followed by a nasal sound, you insert a vowel. And so again, the change that we are making to these English-derived words is a principled change. And some of these things happen in African languages because African languages don't have the same sound structure as languages like English. So there are languages like Kikongo, where words are made up of consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel. So you're not going to get consonant, consonant, that the English word strength, strength. You have a s, t, r. In many West African languages, you can't get that. They have to have consonant, vowel, consonant, vowel, consonant. So if they take over an English word or a French word, which has those consonants coming together, they're either going to drop one of the consonants or they're going to insert a vowel. But all of that takes place in a principled way. I won't explain yet. If we have time for the questions, I'll let you know, what's going on with the I, with the E versus the O. So if we move on to how we form words in English, we get things like chaste, chastity, hostile, hostility, lucid, lucidity, opportune, opportunity, and everybody says, oh, beautiful English. English is a productive language with all of these nice rules. So you can take an English adjective and you add ity to it. So adjective, so a word that's a quality, you add ity to it and you get something that is like a state or a condition. So chastity is the state or condition of being chaste, and so on and so forth. Beautiful English. But then English no more that way. I should point out that there are restrictions. So it's not any and any adjective. And we haven't worked out yet, what's the rules. So you don't get badity, you don't get goodity, you don't get sickity. So only some adjectives seem to work. But in Jamaican, we also have similar things. So we have this E that we can add to words. We can add it to adjectives. So black, we can get blacky, either the mango or an extremely dark person. Whitey, from white, which is a white person. Goody, which is very common now, from good. Charge gives us chargy. Drum, drummy, somebody who plays a drum. Juice, the man who sells juice, juicy. Security, sicky. blink, the verb, blinky, and choke, chokey, a kind of trap that's used to catch birds. Now, I want you to note that we have this regular thing of attaching this "-y" suffix to either adjectives, nouns, or verbs to create a term that is a term of endearment. Move along. A term of endearment. So either names of beloved things, like, I don't have any on it, Blinky, Firefly, Peeniwally, or of beloved people. So Goody, Blackie, Whitey. So it's a pet name, a cute name, shows that we find the thing or the person endearing. Very common, and I've put together a list of, I think, probably close to 200 of these, and I don't think that's an exhaustive list. So it's a very common pattern in the language. But notice we have security here. Security becomes sicky. And this is because you can't just grab any word to create this new word. So you can't just grab any word and attach it to it. That word has to be one syllable long. So if you notice black, white, good, charge, drum, juice, blink, choke, that's one syllable. But because security has more than one syllable, security, it has to fall in line with the rule. And so you cut it down to size. You cut it down to one syllable. And you get sick. And to that sick, you add the E and you get sicky. So we have not just, this rule here is not just to add E to a word in order to create a new word, but the base that you attach it to has a requirement that it be no longer than one syllable. And if you're going to carry out the operation on a word that is longer than one syllable, you have to cut it down to size before you can add E. Rules all around. We have preposition stranding in the language. Preposition stranding is a syntactic situation or construction where the preposition, that shouldn't be proposition, preposition in a sentence is separated from its object. So John went for the bag. When you say, what did John go for? You have stranded the preposition all the way at the end, instead of saying, for what did John go, which sounds kind of quirky. But we say, what did John go for? The what there is the object, replacing the bag, but the for is all the way down at the end. Now, when we do that in Jamaican, something else happens. So when we have a sentence like, John go for the bag, we can't say, correct me if I'm wrong, Wajan Gofi? That sounds odd. So when we strand the preposition fi, it changes its shape to fa. So Wajan Gofa is what is needed in that context. And so the rule of our language says, under preposition stranding, when you strand the preposition fi, it changes into a different form. And think about, English words saying, when you have like who and whom or whose, etc. It's words changing form to exhibit a different sort of function. Same thing happening here. Now I move to highlighting. In English, when you want to highlight something in a sentence, meaning make it more prominent than everything else, or you want to contrast it with other things, English uses intonation or prosody. So for the sentence, Sharon found the book on the ground, if you want to say Sharon did it, not Peter, not Mary, not Latoya, you say Sharon found the book on the ground. If instead you want to say she found it, she didn't steal it, she didn't see it, just see it there, you'd say Sharon found the book on the ground. If you wanted to stress the book, you say Sharon found the book on the ground. If you wanted to stress where she found it, so on the ground, not somewhere else, you say Sharon found the book on the ground, not on the table, etc. In Jamaican, we have a dedicated highlighter. So we have a little particle that indicates that something is being focused. And we call that a focus marker or a highlighter. And we also use movement. So we don't just have this marker, we also have movement. So for a sentence, Sharon find the book on the ground. If you want to highlight Sharon, that Sharon is the one who did it, you would say, a Sharon find the book on the ground. No Peter, no Lataya, a Sharon find it. So Sharon would occur right after this highlighter, this focus marker here. It's hard for you to see the movement when it's the subject that is highlighted. But if we highlight the object, the book, what happens is that the thing that you want to highlight moves out of its original position into a new position. So it moves from here, the book, up to there. So you would say, at the book, Sharon find on the ground. And what happens is that this part closes up. So you notice you say, find on the ground. So it's almost as if you move the thing up and then you just sew up back the rest of the sentence and you're good to go. So we have the focus marker and we have movement out of the original position into the position right after the marker. So let's try to move something else. The location where she found it. So if we want to say upon the ground, if we want to say on the ground, not somewhere else, we can move the whole phrase upon the ground, which is a preposition phrase, and we move it up right behind the highlighter. So we say, upon the ground, Sharon find the book. But notice, if we want to focus or highlight the verb that, you know, it's finding, not seeing, not stealing, not that she did, something else happens. We can't just say, I find Sharon the book on the ground, because that would be incorrect Jamaican. Miss Lou would say, I pile up the language. So we can't say, I find Sharon the book on the ground. This one requires not only that the thing that you're highlighting gets moved, but that a copy of it is left in the original position. And this only happens when you highlight or focus a verb. So we say, I find Sharon find the book on the ground. Rules everywhere in the language. So, quickly copula. And I call it copula because this is from an English perspective. English calls the verb to be a copula. And if you notice, the English sentence, Mary is a teacher, we would say Mary a teacher. Mary is sick, we say Mary sick. Mary is at school, we say Mary they at school. Or some people say Mary they school. If we check in all of these sentences, English uses the same structure. Mary is a teacher, Mary is sick, Mary is at school, but Jamaican is doing different things. We say Mary a teacher, but we don't say Mary a sick, we say Mary sick. And we don't say Mary a school, we say Mary de a school. What is happening here? In the first instance, when we say Mary is a teacher, what we are doing, we are identifying Mary. There's something that she is, and we are using it as a way of identifying her. Mary is a teacher, Mary is a doctor, Mary is Jamaican, Mary is, so it is Mary's identity. Whatever is on the right side of is the identity of the person or thing on the left side of is. Jamaican uses a. So a is almost, we're saying Mary equal teacher. But when we get to Mary is sick, that is really a quality that we are predicating of Mary, a quality that she has. So this is not an identity. So it's a different thing that we're doing. English uses the same dead-back strategy. Jamaican notices that the strategy is different. So it uses that the expression is different, so we use a different strategy. So we just say Mary sick. And by the way, sick here is a verb, which we can test, because we can say a sick, Mary sick, and we get that movement and repetition that I spoke of, which only happens with verbs. So in English, sick is an adjective. In Jamaican, sick can be an adjective as well as a verb. And then for Mary is at school, we say Mary day at school. That's a location. So whatever is on the right side is the location of the thing on the left. So three different things. English is using the same strategy for all of them, but Jamaican recognizes that these are different, and so we use different strategies. And there are West African languages that organize their grammars like this. Fongbe, for example, does something very close to what Jamaican does. And so if you're saying Jamaican is not a language, don't have no rules, you're saying that Fongbe is not a language, it doesn't have any rules because it doesn't behave like English. Don't make no sense. Quickly, I'll try to run through these. There's agglutination in Jamaican, and a lot of it all over the place. Agglutination takes place in languages where items get fused. We get agglutination in languages of West Central Africa, Southern Africa, called Bantu languages. A lot of things get fused together. So if you think about the Jamaican word na, the Jamaican word na, like me na go down there, is a fusion of the negative marker no and the progressive marker, that marker that shows that something is in progress. Ah. So when you say na, you're really saying me no ah. So it's fused together. That's happening all over the language. So I will say, Kingston people will say, me I go tell him. I would say me go tell him or me o tell him. But we can also say mo tell him, where you delete the vowel from the first word and you make the second sound, the second vowel longer, or the vowel from the next word. That's clearer from the next one. Me I go tell him, people say ma I go tell him. So you drop the E and you make the next vowel longer. Me we tell him, me tell him. You da know, you da know. You a go talk, ya go talk. Me did see him, me see him. So the me id or the me did and the see him both get fused. Me'd see him. See it there, see it there. So how you know? So you know. So you know. And what they're doing in each case systematically is deleting the vowel from the first word and then lengthening the second vowel. Somebody pointed out to me that Haitian also has this thing going on where you're getting fusion, like mwe ap pale. They would say map pale. So the mwe gets reduced to ap. Similar things happening to languages that have a common history, a common background. Emphatic pronouns. A lot of people wouldn't recognize that we have emphatic pronouns. So we don't only have me, but you can also say me. Me I talk to you. And don't bring that to me. As well as you can say me I talk to you. But there's an emphatic form, me. That emphatic form can occur as the subject me I talk to you, or him I talk to me. You does it, she does it, we does it. But not him, not it, not uno, not them. And notice, whereas you can use me, you, and all of them as possessive adjectives. So you can say me book, your book, you can't say me book. So me can occur as subject and object, but it can't, sorry, I should say, can occur as subject and object in the same way that me, the short version, can occur as subject and object. But me can't occur as possessive adjective. So you can say me book, but not me book. You can say you book, but not you book. They can say that in Guyanese English Creole. So they say me mother, tell me that. We don't say that. The grammar of our language is different from the grammar of theirs. And what's happening here is that the pronouns that have a CV structure get the vowel, so consonant vowel, they get the vowel lengthened, and so you get CVV. But if it doesn't have this structure, CV, then it can't get this lengthening. So you don't have any unu, you don't have any dame. It's just the ones that have a CV structure. So what have we learned today? Grammar rules start out in the brains of speakers of a language. So for all of that, Jamaican people know those. They didn't read them in any book. So we have to forget this thing that the grammar resides in books. They learned them from being members of this particular community. The grammar that was in their parents' head now gets reflected in their heads. So grammar rules start out in the brains of speakers. Some societies have converted their head knowledge into book knowledge. So they have taken their grammar that was in people's head and they have put them in books. That is the stage of development that we are at now. Because the Jamaican language is as systematic as any other language. It has rules. And I haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg because there's only so much I could do in 30 minutes. But what we need to do now is to put ours in books. And I don't want to put ours in books so that we can now tell people, say this and don't say that. But it's a way of representing the knowledge of our people, the knowledge of our community, in the same way that English people, Portuguese people, Polish people, etc., have represented the grammar of their languages. Thanks for your time. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Dr. Farquharson. Wide-ranging and very, very interesting. At this point, well, let me welcome President Newton, who has been able to join us. President Newton, glad you could join us.
Thank you, Peace Joe.
Yeah. If what we like to do is we like to provide an opportunity for those who want to ask a question. The easiest way to do it is put your hand up in the chat if you know how to do that. If you don't know how to do it, then you're gonna have to find a way to interject or ask somebody. Ask your kids. They'll show you how to do it. Let me just start off with this point. I'm glad you mentioned the thing about power, language and power, because many years ago, I heard the same statement that if I conquer you, what you speak is a dialect, and what I speak is a language. And you really brought that back home, and confirmed that saying that I've always heard, well, from many, many years ago. What one word I kind of surprised you didn't use it, but I would still like to hear you use it in its, I don't know if I should say how you decline. I don't even know if decline is the right word, but give us a little bit on uno, please. I'd love to hear.
Conjugate.
Conjugate. You're right, Earl. Yes, if you could just give us a little bit on uno and the way it's pluralized, that I'll leave that to you.
Okay, so thanks very much for the questions. The matter you raise about language versus dialect, and it's something I try to point out to my students. It's a colonial way of viewing things. That you find that, you know, wherever colonizers go, is that what they speak is referred to as language, and everybody else's thing is a dialect. And even while I teach at the university level, I'll have my students talk about the English language, the Portuguese language, the Polish language, and then talk about the African dialects. Why have you switched terminology? And you do find this in 19th century works by Europeans working among the First Nation people in the US, in North America, or in Africa, that they refer to the languages of the indigenous population as dialects, because they're coming in with a completely different system. Ono is from the Igbo language, IGBO, spoken in modern day Nigeria. And it means the same thing there as it does for us, which is you all. So the second person plural. And why it was adopted is because apparently whatever dialect of English or dialects formed the basis for Jamaican, our ancestors realized that they were impoverished. And that they talk about, you know, and Miss Lou said this, you know, you're talking to one person and say you. You're talking to 50 people and you say you. No. So they realized they had a need for a distinction, and so they brought over a pronoun from their language to be used for this. And it is fully incorporated because you don't only have uno, but you also have it being used in the reflexive. So you also get uno self. So it behaves like all of the others, myself, yourself, himself, we self, uno self, themself, etc. So that's the best I can say about uno now, but it's one of those things that's straight out of Africa.
Interesting. Okay, I see President Newton had his hand up. Go ahead, President Newton. You first.
Thank you, DP Strut. Although I must admit that DP Earl had his hand up before me, but I'll grab the spot. Great presentation, Dr. Farquharson. I tell you, you had me trying to follow the rules. And although I must admit that I didn't get it in terms of how the rules came about for some things. I just want to make a note. I kind of fell in love with the words badity and goodity. I mean, I'm pretty sure if there's any DJ online tonight, we'll soon hear it in a song or so. But what I wanted to ask is two things. I saw somebody put it in the chat, and I have my thing too. A lot of Jamaicans say evening instead of evening. How does that come about? That's number one. And number two, I have always taken Dr. Carolyn Cooper as one of the persons who pushed, for our, what they call our dialect as a language. I mean, I used to read her in the Sunday paper just to try and see the English versus the patois. But I didn't see, in the list of books that you had up, I didn't see her. So I'm wondering if she hasn't written on this, or if all her thing is really in the paper and not in a book form.
Okay, all right, cool. So let's start with, you said you didn't follow, and of course, because I was going at lightning speed. This thing needs hours. So I haven't really done justice to the majesty of our language because of the short time, because they need processing. Here what? I'm not cussing you, but there are some assumptions that we make. And I know you're seriously trying to understand and to follow the rules. But let me not use you. Let me an unknown other person.
No, man, go ahead and use me, man. I am good because to tell you what you did kind of explain to me some of the things. I understood why you were doing it. But if you were to leave me on my own to follow the rules, I would probably go awry apart from, So please go ahead and use me as an example.
Yeah, okay. But notice the very high standard that people have for the Jamaican language. So the Jamaican language must prove itself. So you want to see in a detailed way why, this is and why this is a rule and so forth. But then for most of the things we have been introduced to as English grammar, we not ask how them come about. We just take them as a so it go. But we hold Jamaican to this standard. And this is the thing, that those who go before get to set the standard. When the Queen died, we saw a lot of things in terms of ceremony and pageant. No, we haven't had a monarch who has died for, what is it, 70 years now or so on. So a lot of what you're seeing there, they're playing it by ear. They're making it up, but they get to set the standard. And then, however many years down the line, when, another such occasion comes up, then, we'll get to add some more things to it. And what was done a couple years ago now becomes standard and so on and so forth. So forerunners and pathfinders get to set the pace. Evening. What is happening there? Let me tell you. We have phonologists on the call, and so I don't want to look like a fool in an area that is not mine. What is happening here is that I believe they're trying to create a wider distinction between the two sounds v and n. So where in the mouth they are articulated, they are very close. And so what is done is that you replace one of the words in order, and the term we use is called ease of articulation, to create a smoother flow in the words. And so it's really based on how the organs of speech work in tandem. I'm not sure if Nikisha Dawkins is on the call. She is a phonologist and could explain this. But this happens in languages all over the world. If you check the English word, it's just because most of us learn English from books that we will say things like handbag. But your first language speakers of English don't say handbag. They say handbag. So ham, the thing you eat at Christmas time, they say handbag because they have paused the sound that ends the first syllable to look more or sound closer to the sound that follows. So that b is a bilabial sound. It's produced with both lips, and so they change out the final sound of hand to make it look more like that bilabial, which is m, which is also a bilabial. So for Carolyn Cooper, champion of the language, Carolyn's area is literatures in English. But she also recognized that the literature produced by our people is a significant body in addition to the literature of the world. In fact, Mervyn Morris was one of the first persons, if not the first person, to study the writings of Louise Bennett. Otherwise, people would have continued going on kiki-keying over, these funny things that she's writing. And he pointed out that this is serious literature. Professor Carolyn Cooper continued that trend. So a lot of her work is in literature. She shifted to dancehall, which of course uses the Jamaican language a whole lot. And so if you're looking for linguistics, you're not going to find it from Prof. Cooper, except in the joint work that she has done with Professor Hubert Devonish.
Okay.
With the permission of DP Stewart, I just want
Yes.
to say one last thing, Dr. Farquharson. I've learned a lot just by listening to Professor Vereen Shepherd's history program. And I really believe that you need something like that. I really believe that the country needs something like that. Because tonight I have been thoroughly convinced that what we have is a language, no matter what anybody wants to say.
Oh, you should tell me that you were so easy to convince.
No, man, no, you were so good at what you are doing.
Oh.
Okay.
Thank you.
Earl, actually, why I didn't see your hand was because your background is almost white, so it didn't show up.
It wasn't. I changed it since. That's why it's now white. But anyway.
Okay. Yeah, right. Go ahead.
Dr. Farquharson.
Yes, sir.
Everybody will say the same thing, that you are enlightening us, and we definitely had no clue of how important I think our language really is. Just recently, since I've been having a discussion with Stuart, which we have a lot of times on the language here, I was watching a football match just the other day, and I didn't know the name of the team. And then it found out that it was a Cape Verde football team. So I looked it up to see where they were, what they did. Found it was Portuguese, and that they had Creole. They spell it Kriul or something like that. And what was instructive to me is that it is this Portuguese is the official language that government uses, and that instructions are given mainly because that's the communication for the rest of the world. Sounds familiar?
Yeah.
And that's the same, and 80%, they said, of the people speak the Creole. So it cannot be unique to Cape Verde Islands, nor to Jamaica. It must be a worldwide thing. Every country has its language. And I'm glad how you initially explained how the thing comes to be dialect and how dialect is interpreted.
Mm-hmm.
We always think of dialect as what Miss Lou was trying to play with. And yet it is a language. I have been enlightened, and there's so much I've learned. I just wanted to had to say something because I couldn't help it. But there's one thing I couldn't understand.
May I just say that there's an
Yes,
atlas of Pidgin and Creole languages, which has about 77 languages. So this thing we call Creole is kind of like a special type. And there are quite a few across the globe. It's called the Atlas of Pidgin and Creole Language Structures. And in it, you can see descriptions of various languages: Cabo Verde, Cape Verde, Trinidad and Tobago, Bahamas, Jamaican, etc., Haitian. I should point out too that when I started trying to learn Haitian many moons ago, I was kind of surprised that for a lot of things, it seemed as if I just needed to take out the French words and put in English words, and I'd get Jamaican Creole. The structures were so very similar. So for something like, I'm sick, I'm really sick, where we say, I sick, me sick. Haitian Creole, they say, c'est malade, moi malade. It's the same structure. So yeah, you have another point, another question.
Yes, and you were saying something just over the weekend. Somebody was trying to say the word Smith, and they could not say other than Smith. They were trying to, emphasize it. And you're explaining it here. So it looks as if there's nothing wrong in anything anybody says. That's what is my conclusion.
Look, we are stressed out people. We used to do this and think and that and so on. And the 2001 language education policy for Jamaica actually told teachers, to focus on that because it's a main point of difference between the Jamaican language and English. But then I had my students listen to the Governor General, Prime Minister, and Leader of the Opposition, their Independence Day messages over a couple of years. And they are dotting all over the place. So the Jamaican people, that, those, etc., which means that is standard Jamaican English, not this thing that we have in our minds. And plus Irish people say that and them, etc. And nobody is thinking, oh, they are not speaking proper English. But again, as a post-colonial people, there's an insecurity that we have, and a reluctance to name, to claim, to own things. And so that I say those people are talking nonsense, why should I feel less than the person who says those people are talking nonsense? Yeah. The Irish people say that, and nobody thinks that, oh, it's because they are backward people.
Well, it's mainly because we were not exposed. If we were exposed and realized that every country, the majority speak what everybody wants, and is the powers that decide it's colloquial, we would think differently. I'm a whole heap of years in this land now, and therefore it's hard for me to switch. It makes me accept more. But the painful thing is when I realize that I think I speak standard English and I don't. That's what it would turn out to be. So you're very enlightening, and I know there's a whole lot more you could say, and everybody else wants to say something. Thank you for the presentation.
Thanks for your input.
And DP Chris, DP Chris.
DP Stuart.
Yes, please.
Before you go on, sir, may I ask for a member of the club to move for an extension of 10 minutes for us to complete our business?
So moved.
Seconded.
May I have a second? Okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, the CCJ, you're up next. Your hand was up next. And then we're gonna go to Con Henry or Con. But let's
my hand is up. My hand is also up, sir.
Is this the court of this?
Okay.
CCJ, I think that's Trinidad or something.
I'm on now.
Go
excuse my voice. I have a sore throat, so excuse. I hope you can hear me clearly.
I can hear.
I'll be very, very short. Could you explain? I am a Jamaican living in Trinidad now. And it is very pronounced when I hear Jamaicans speak and they're dropping the H. Can you explain why we always tend to drop the H's from our words?
No, we don't always drop so there are two
times.
There are two patterns. There's H addition and there's H dropping. And both of them go back to dialects of English. A common misconception in the population is that the Jamaican language comes from standard English. And that's something that I neglected to point out in that whole spiel about dialects and so on. Because they are looking at standard English and say, oh, the English word is happy, and we say happy, so we drop the. No. The Jamaican language was made chiefly from dialects of English. So it's not the English of the priests and the lawyers and so on, but it's the English of normal English people, the people who said happy. So if you watch Harry Potter and you listen to the character Hagrid, Hagrid pronounces his name Hagrid and says Harry. There are dialects of English in England that will drop H's, and there are dialects that will add H's, and that's just a carryover for us. And in fact, in the 17th century, I believe it was very common, even in standard English, for people to drop H's. And this was because of French influence, because you get French-derived words like our hour, like what hour of the day is it, and honest, etc. And so people
and honorable.
It is all over the place in their best English. We say woman, we drop the W. That's a feature of 17th century English. So woman, etc. So many of these things are carryovers. So when people say, oh, our ancestor them did backward, them never hear properly, no. For many things they heard and reproduced perfectly. Other things they changed. You got your answer?
Yes, certainly. Thank you. Very good presentation. Actually, I wished that we could have gone on much longer.
Okay, it would be that would have been great. Let me go to Corn. Is it Corn, Henry? I'm not sure if I'm. Yeah, it looks like that. Yeah, your time, and then we go to. We just want.
Hello,
Go
good
ahead, Corn.
evening.
Go ahead.
Good night, everybody.
Yes.
I think I'm the only St. Lucian on board. So I would say bonsoir to the presenter. I came at the tail end of your presentation. So thank you so much for that. I just want so very, very in depth. I came at the tail end of your presentation, and I was very much informed. I've been I've had many Jamaican friends, and I've listened to the way Jamaican language, as you say tonight, have been expressed and spoken, and I found it so different from our own in St. Lucia. Now, as most of you know, we have a dual language in St. Lucia. We have the so-called Standard English, we have the so-called Patois or Creole, and we have the St. Lucian slang. Now, all of that is different from everything that you guys have in Jamaica. And I don't have a question per se, but I just wanted to point out what my experience has been. My very first exposure to any Jamaican person was when I spent 3 months in Trinidad. I was pursuing a course with the Presentation Brothers, who actually, as I'm sure some of you know, have dominated the education system in the Caribbean. And I was there for 3 months, and we had 2 delegates from Jamaica, and boy, I used to listen to her speak, and I was like, man, she reminds me of everything that we used to listen to on the radio, like Creole, reggae, and just reggae in general. And I'm not sure if you guys know this, but the Jamaican language has had huge impacts on the entire Caribbean. So that's I don't know if that's something that you guys should be proud of, or if you have noticed it. The other thing I want to say is the Creole language was very much frowned upon by educated people in St. Lucia, especially when we were growing up. We didn't have so much access to secondary education. So many people did not go to secondary school. And there were only 2 major secondary schools that were run by the nuns and the Presentation Brothers. And those people who became educated became doctors and lawyers, and there was they so-called spoke Standard English. But everybody speaks the Patois. Now, if you're a country boy going into downtown Castries and you try to speak English, people will look at you and frown upon you. And you try to speak Creole, and they'll say, "Oh, you're from the country," you know. So I grew up hearing that sort of thing, being exposed to that, and I would not want to speak the Patois at all. But we are surrounded by Patois, whether it's music.
And I'd say too, but I don't necessarily want the reverse discrimination,
right?
But that thing of people say, oh, how you're speaking English, etc. I normally point out to people, and I remember Cleo and I had a discussion on this. I said, that discomfort that you feel, just bear in mind that this is how the majority of the population in these countries have been made to feel over several centuries. So that little discomfort that you feel is nothing compared to how a child, to how a man, a woman, or several of them, multiples, have been made to feel over so many generations because they don't speak the language of the minority.
Right. So anyways, as an adult now, I really cherish that heritage that we have, that patois, that Creole, because the best jokes are said in Creole, the best music, the best little colloquialisms are said in Creole. And I just wanted to point out too bad places like Trinidad, the younger folks do not know how to speak it, because during my stint there, I spent some time with some of the older folks living in nursing homes, and I met a Chinese Trinidadian. She speaks perfect Trinidadian English, but boy, when she got to the Creole, it sounded like my grandmother.
And you're talking French Creole.
French Creole, and boy, let me tell you, that thing took me back home. It was like sweet, boy, to see this. And mind you, St. Lucia, we have no Chinese people. It's mostly African and East Indian. But to hear a Chinese person speaking my language was the most nourishing thing that I'd ever experienced. So that's just a St. Lucian peeping into the Jamaican affairs there, and that's my bit. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Thanks for that. And you weren't correct about not having any St. Lucian here, because we do have a member who is from St. Lucia. Anyway, I'm moving on to the next person. P. Oh, it's Madden.
LG Desmond.
O'Neill. No. Well, where did he's
O'Neill Madden is written there.
It's O'Neill Madden. That's the next person. Yeah. Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you.
And let's try and keep it short, because we need to tie up, but I want to get to all the questions that the hands are up now. So go ahead.
O'Neill, I'm sorry, I'm going to do the unthinkable and the unforgivable, but you have ready access to me.
No, so but not us. We want to hear.
Yeah. You have ready access to me.
No, I'm not going to ask you about the language itself. I know I can speak to you on a personal level on that, but where do we go from here in terms of getting the population to have a better understanding of the intricacies of the Jamaican language? I remember writing a column and suggesting that since most of the school population interacts with teachers from the teachers' colleges, it probably would be fitting for, at that level, there's an elective or something that is offered where these teachers could have a better understanding, and then subsequently in the high school system, they could sort of, give this knowledge to the students. Because I know that somebody mentioned earlier in communication studies, there is in one of the units, there's something about the Jamaican language, but then not everybody may end up going to sixth form. And we probably would want the students have that kind of knowledge before they leave high school or before they enter university. So how can we have better access and transmit greater knowledge of the Jamaican language?
Ooh, all right. So let me put Kiwanians on the spot. So since 2018, the country has been working with a new curriculum, the National Standards Curriculum, which governs education from grade 1 to grade 9. And the National Standards Curriculum says that children should be able to read and write in both languages. It's the most progressive curriculum we've ever had. But the teachers have not been prepared to teach in Jamaican. The materials are not available. And so we have put together a program for doing that, for rolling this out, but lack the necessary funding to implement. And so if the Kiwanis Club is looking for a project, please let us talk. I think that's the easiest way, because we're trying to do it in such a way that it's not an additional financial burden on the teachers. They are working while on the job, studying this thing, implementing on the job, seeing how things work, and also gaining a qualification from it. But that we're not asking somebody on a teacher's salary to fork out how much thousand. So we wanted to find a partner who would be willing, either to raise funds, etc., that could cover, a good part or most of the cost of implementing this bilingual or dual language education.
Interesting. But isn't that something on the government's agenda? I mean, I'm just wondering. Or you just don't well, maybe you could say what you reply to that. I would have thought that that is something that they would have to assume.
Okay.
All right, don't worry. I take from the look on your face that I understand what you're talking about. That's something we can think about. Let me just run straight to Nicola Hall, and then it will be LG Desmond, and then Earl, I think, has another question. So go ahead, Nikisha. No, it's not Nikki. It's Nicola. Sorry, Nicola.
Nika.
Thank you. Someone understands what my name is supposed to be pronounced like. Yes, it's Nika. All right.
No, I couldn't read it. I wasn't able to read it clearly. If I seen this full
it's not an
spelling, I would
English
have.
name. But it's
Okay.
understandable. It's not an English name. It's a Nigerian name. So I have two questions. The first question is, just wanted you to address the differences in patois between East and West Jamaica. I see a difference. I don't know if anyone else really sees a difference. So, for example, my co-workers who come from Montego Bay and, that side of Jamaica, they have a tendency when we have conversations, me benago. They love to use the ben. Don't know where the ben comes from.
Montego Bay should be, but yeah.
Right. And so, yes, from like Montego.
How would you say I will be eating?
I usually hear the word Ben.
Never eat.
Nika, how would you say I will be eating?
Me I go eat.
Kingstonian, but Western me they go eat.
Well, for me, I will be eating has to be rendered as me go denyam. If I say me de go eat, that just means I am going to eat. But I will be eating is me go denyam. And from checking with with other friends from Kingston, they seem to have just one form that covers the will be what would be two separate forms for me. Degonyam and godenyam. Godenyam is will be eating. So at some point in the future, me godenyam bami when you come tomorrow. So when you arrive, I will be in the process of eating bamis, as opposed to just I will be eating bami. So there are distinctions. We don't yet have a very good sense of what those distinctions are. I did boast that Jamaican is one of the best described languages, but we still don't have a global sense of the language. And look, people have been describing English from about the 1500s. And up to now, English can't done. They're finding new things. We cannot think that from Beryl Bailey's 120-odd page grammar from 1966, that is the language. There is so much that needs to be discovered, that needs to be described. So if you want to do linguistics and come and help us describe it, because there's a whole lot. Right now, I'm engaged in a project funded by Chase Fund to provide, I should say, a comprehensive dictionary for the Jamaican language, which will be called the Dictionary of the Jamaican Language. And the difference between this and previous attempts is that it will describe the language not just in the areas where it differs from English. So we're not just describing sick, meaning the food sick me, because that's where it's different from standard English. But we're doing the food sick me, the sick picnic, which is an adjective, and the picnic sick. Those are ways in which Jamaicans use the word sick. And so this dictionary is supposed to be a comprehensive description, which is now moving us closer to the language as to Jamaican as a language in its own right than as something that is hitched on to English. English is a Germanic language. It comes from the same branch as German, etc. But when we describe English, we don't go and look at what German is doing. We describe how English people use the language. So that is what we need to do at this stage in our development.
Okay. Moving along, we want to see if we can get to her. Earl, did you not take down your hand, or you have not? You put your hand up again?
You're muted.
I had moved it out of position so that DP could have gone ahead. But I only wanted to make a little comment, so I will do it quickly. And you hit the nail on the head, Dr. Farquharson, when you said about how they've been working on English all these centuries. Because my favorite thing has been My Fair Lady and Professor Harrison, or whatever his name is. I mean, forget it, but you know who I mean.
Yes.
And when he was studying everything that Liza Doolittle did, and it took from the gutter, so on. And I have recited many of those songs, and I actually believe it. And like you said, the conqueror implants his way, and you try to be like them to arrive at a standard. It's going to take quite a while for us all in Jamaica to accept that our language really has the power, even though it is shown in the music, but it takes long. And because I've been around so long, I believe that it's still going to take the others, it may take the others easier. It may make it easier for them. But I would like to hear more from you. And I don't know if you give other lectures. I mean, I know you're a lecturer, but I mean to give another address like this.
And it's us getting over the biases and discrimination. Yes. We automatically evaluate people who speak Jamaican as being less intelligent. I'm now involved with Wycliffe Caribbean in translating the Old Testament into Jamaican. So the Jamaican language unit is acting as language consultants to Wycliffe, as we did to Bible Society for the West Indies for the translation of the New Testament. Went to Eltham to test the translation. Was it of Genesis? And there was a little 11-year-old boy. The only thing that he said the whole night, which sounded more English, was obviously, but straight patois right throughout. Every time he opened his mouth, my jaw was on the floor. The complex ideas that he was unpacking. And I told him, I don't want to detract anything from my students at university. But he explained some things in Jamaican about what we were seeing in the text, meaning the grammar of stuff, etc., that I haven't even heard from some of my students at university. Which means that the language can convey complex ideas. It's just that we have dismissed it and we're not listening to people.
Okay. Let's move. Thank you. Let's move to Stephen. Where's Stephen? I see another person in front of you now. Okay.
Does Clarence still have his hand up?
I think LG Desmond is still waiting, BP.
It's
But where
okay.
is
It's
he?
okay, President. I have given up on that. It's okay. Thanks.
No, Desmond, but I saw Steve as next, and then now I see
No,
Kathy Lee.
I'm all right, man. I think the questions have been answered somewhat, so I'm fine.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay. Kathy Lee Grant, or
Hi,
Carrie Lee?
Carrie Lee
Carrie.
Grant.
Yeah.
Yes, calling, checking in from New York. Recently, where I work, we deal with language learners across Long Island, and we had the privilege of having some presenters about the Jamaican language, including Cheryl Ann, Dr. Ronald Francis, and Dr. Clive Forrester. And so some of the people are also doing an asynchronous course where they're answering some questions, looking at the presentation, looking at videos, etc., including one by Dr. Carolyn Cooper. And one of the questions, and there's a question at the bottom, like, what else would you like to know? And one of the people said, can we find lessons, like math lessons or science lessons using the Jamaican language? So I responded, like, I look on YouTube and I saw this math channel where somebody was doing CSEC and he was using the language. But I said, look, people are using it in schools. Some teachers may say, no, you can't speak it, but it's a bilingual, we have bilingual schools. We're just not acknowledging it. So my ask is, I would love for us to produce, I know we have like the UE debates in Patois. I would love for educators to start talking more about subjects, to piggyback on what Dr. Farquharson was just saying. Can you post stuff, encourage educators to post stuff either on social media, YouTube, whatever, showing how they're teaching concepts in their science class, their math class, their tech class, and all and stuff, so we can share, because there are people all over the world looking for this information. Please and thanks.
Yeah. I keep on saying, English people convinced us that language is good. That English is the language of the world it didn't happen by chance. It's not because there's anything special about English. It came about through colonization and because of marketing. In the post-Second World War period, England, the UK set up the British Council with the aim of spreading British values and language. So it was a marketing campaign that has clearly worked, because today English is a multi-billion-dollar industry across the world. We're talking about textbooks, we're talking about dictionaries, exams, markers, translations, interpreting, etc. This is because they had faith in their language. Opportunities are coming up, but they are slow. And I think until we get state support, we are going to continue to lag, because it's preventing us from selling the language in the way that it can. Because you go to buy the thing, and I say, but who else support this thing? But the government don't support it. You're going to think twice about it. What we have accomplished, what the language has accomplished, has been accomplished despite government support. And I think if we got if we got the support of well-thinking progressive Jamaicans, we could be making more money out of this thing. Right now, I'm working with a company in the US where I run exams for them, language competence tests, where people for their jobs have to come to them to get certified as speakers of Jamaican. This company is not a Jamaican company, but them are making it for the language.
That's amazing. It's amazing. Okay, Marcel, go ahead, Marcel.
Yeah, quick one. Great, fabulous presentation. Towards the end of the presentation, you use a word which touched me. I've always been there with it. Insecurity. And I will add to it inferiority, the feeling of being inferior, and they have used the language. And in fact, just what you spoke of just now, right? They have been masters at marketing, the whole thing of being superior. And they have also used the language in that way, right? In every respect they have done it. So that's just a quick one to add to what you said about insecurity, feeling insecure and using the language. And a part of that is that you're made to feel you're inferior by using the language.
And may I just add something to that, Marcel? That it's not just the English people who do it. Jamaican educated people do it to make other Jamaicans feel inferior.
You know, that wasn't part of my thing, but I don't want to have too much time because Upper St. Andrew in Kingston will do it deliberately.
Yeah.
But I can tell you this, when they are by themselves, them no joke talk the Jamaican language. But when they come, I'm telling you, when I say no, well, we know it. We know it.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
on
Sorry,
the
go ahead.
a brief point on the insecurity, because I had a conversation with somebody today where I pointed out, and this is something I've been looking at for a little while now. A lot of the things that we consider high culture coming from Europe, what we are really looking at is the folk culture of Europeans.
Yes.
Their intellectuals have taken and developed, and it is now high culture.
Yes.
The problem is that we have dismissed our folk culture.
Yes.
And elevated theirs.
Yes. Big thing that.
To do for ours what they did to theirs.
Yes.
So European philosophy, continental European philosophy represents the world view of European people.
Yes.
All sorts of fancy terms, etc. But it's how European people do the world.
This is fair.
Okay. All right. I don't see any more hands up. So I think this is a good time for me to invite Ralston, PDT Ralston, to give the vote of thanks. Right. This has been something else. Ralston, over to you.
Dr. Farquharson, you there?
Still.
That means you're hearing me.
Yeah, man. No, Come me alone for hear you.
Just thank you tonight for your presentation, and I found it very interesting.
So what makes you change?
Eh?
Can't keep it up. Can't keep it up. He doesn't know enough of the language.
I think that a people is defined by this language and how we own our language and how we feel proud about it. But really your presentation is especially important and timely because we have always have this discussion about the acceptability of patois as a means of communication. And indeed, some people hold on to it and they hold it in low regard, as was just intimated by Earl. But you have come here and you have showed us that our language is important and we should be proud of it, And I think that I am accurate in saying that on behalf of all of us, that this has been one of the most interesting presentations that you have had in the Kiwanis Club of Kingston. We understand that education is an exchange of information, and in Jamaican schools, it seems as if the most popular and effective way to educate children is to use the language of the people. But somehow we continue to shy away from it. As a matter of fact, even in Parliament, they say that you have to speak a certain language or you will not be heard. So it's something that we fight about in Jamaica. But I want to really thank you on behalf of all of us on this call tonight, over 100 persons, all very locked into what you have been saying. It is obvious to me that your presentation has to be serialized. You come here 2 or 3 times because we past the time allotted for a meeting now, but you have our interest riveted, and I tell you the truth, brethren, everything just lock and nice, But we thank you. There is a
let me apologize. You know, I kind of just got wrapped up in this and I didn't get around to preparing, but I am going to prepare a certificate of appreciation for you,
I got
Dr.
it.
Farquharson.
There is no normally, Doc, we express our appreciation by presenting you with a plaque, which I'm sure will be done. And at the same time, we want to know that you're available to come back. As a matter of fact, membership in the club is always open, you know, so we can talk. Big up yourself. Respect.
Okay.
Enough
Thank you. Thank you. And back to you, President Newton.
Thank you, DP Stewart. And Dr. Farquharson, I know PDT Ralston has said it aptly, but I too want to say thank you. When I looked and I see where tonight we had, at one stage, I still have
129.
Almost 120, and it is way, way, way past some people's bedtime.
135 one time.
Yeah, I saw up to 179.
Right, yeah, man. Over 170.
No, I saw 180 something.
And more past one now. Yeah, right. And it speaks to it speaks to the need for your presentation and the way that you have delivered. So as PDT Ralston said, thank you, enough respect.
And let me just throw in that.
All right.
This is sorry. Let me just say that it's gonna be up on on our channel by tomorrow. It's actually on YouTube now because we did it live. But
Someone just shared it. Someone just shared it.
Okay.
In the chat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fine. Go ahead, President Newton.
So what it does, it gives people like me a chance to listen to it over and over and over again and get a deeper understanding of my language. So thank you again, sir. All right, at this point in time, we're going to ask the Sergeant at Arms, Zuri, to take over.
I didn't see his name when I was checking earlier.
Sergeant, are you here? Okay, well, if the sergeant isn't on, then we'll just ask each member of the club to make a contribution of $300. Please pass on the amount to DLG Willie. We know who you are. Don't let us have to come and collect it. Are there any notices and announcements or interclub opportunities that anyone on the platform would want to highlight right now? Please go ahead.
President, may I?
Yes, PDT.
Yes, there is a committee that is looking at courtesy and discipline in schools, and they're going to roll out a whole program as we have that intervention in the schools, especially at the primary level, where we think it can be most effective. That committee will be launching on the 6th of February, but we want an opportunity to sensitize the club of what it is, what are the aims, and how we plan to achieve it. It is being rolled out by Division 23 East, but it involves all the divisions in Jamaica because the intention is to make it a national effort. So we will be requesting before the 6th an opportunity to make a presentation.
Thank you, PDT, and I'm pretty sure that the request will be welcome and granted. Any other notices or announcements? No? All right.
Good evening, President Newton.
Go ahead. Hi, Chairman Crystal.
Hi, President Newton. Okay, the Kiwanis Club of Montego Bay will be having our meeting this Thursday. Our guest speaker is none other than Lieutenant Governor-elect Sandra Bailey. It's going to be a great topic about service. So hop on. It starts at 6 p.m. Some clubs have already have the link. If you don't, I'll go ahead and share it in this Zoom chat and with your presidents. Thank you so much. And that was a fabulous presentation, Doc. It turned up Montego Bay style.
Certainly was. Certainly was. Thank you, Chairman Crystal. Any other notices and announcement and our announcements? Okay, well, let's move on then for our thoughts for the week with DP Marcel.
Thank you. And I'll do it in the so-called standard English and then in the good Jamaican language. It says, life's battles don't always go to the stronger or faster man, but sooner or later, the man who wins is the man who thinks he can. Wait I say is, the battle in a life are not always the strongest or the fastest man. But you up now, you soon find out say is the man who think him can that will be the winner. That's our thought for the week.
Okay.
Big up yourself, Mars.
And that's how you see it.
Thank you, DP Marcel. All right. At this point, I wasn't here at the beginning of the meeting, so I just want to thank all of you who joined us this evening. This is our first online meeting, so I want to wish everybody a prosperous 2024. And at this point, we have received our thought for the week. We have received our notices and all of that. Then I'm going to ask each and every one of you now to raise your glass and raise a toast to Kiwanis International, Jamaica, land we love. It is now 9:32 and know well past some person's bedtime, but it was well worth it. And so this meeting of the Kiwanis Club of Kingston is now terminated. Thank you all for coming and have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Press.
Yeah. Big up, big up, big up.